Well, I never thought we'd see the day, but here's John Shannon in a rental car with John Gibbons somewhere outside Lloydminster, Alberta.
Well,
How are you?
There's my personal driver, just for the record. He's doing okay. He's doing fine. But I've been spending 2 days with him. I've spent 2 days with Gibbons, and now I got a Texas drawl. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, just tell him that sign that says 100 is not miles, Gibby. All right.
That's right. No, we made record time from Edmonton Airport to Lloydminster the day before yesterday. I think we're a little more conservative.
So what brought you to Alberta with the beloved former Blue Jays manager? Tell us the story here, John.
Well, I tell you what, we got connected about 6 months ago with the local Alberta Junior Hockey League team, the Lloydminster Bobcats. There is some irony in the name Bobcats when you consider I worked with a guy named Bobcat for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So that it's their number one fundraiser of the year, and Scott MacArthur, another guy from the East, and Gibbons and me, we had a great time with about 600 of our closest friends in Lloydminster last night.
Excellent.
Fabulous.
Good.
I hope you know when to steal third base at the end of this trip, too. I hope you get some strategy here from Gibbons.
We had a straw poll, and we got Gibbons, the manager of the Blue Jays, job back last night. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good.
All right. I mean, if it's going to a popular vote, it's Gibby.
Yeah.
John, a lot of signs pointing here to Quinn Hughes being the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks. We've had this discussion in the past. We're asking our Bodog poll question. Is he the best choice? What says you?
Well, first of all, I'm on the record, and I'm going to stay consistent. I'm not a big captains guy. I think in 2023, what we keep hearing about on every NHL team is leadership groups. And I think that's a better indication of how coaching staffs and management try to get to all of the players in the room. I also love the way that JT Miller handles situations. We saw that during COVID. We saw it when the Canucks were set aside for a few weeks when everybody was sick, and how he managed it and complained to the league publicly to get things changed. So I like his outspokenness. I don't think he needs a C on his sweater to be the captain. That said, if you're going to point at one player that has leadership ability, that is going to be the future of the franchise, that is going to be here a while, has great pedigree when you think about his brothers and his father being so active in the hockey world, I don't think there's a better guy that you can find than Quinn Hughes. And if the Canucks feel that strength that they have to have a captain, I don't think there's anybody better than Quinn Hughes.
And, of course, part of the captaincy is you actually have to want the appointment. And Quinn Hughes certainly sounded like he wanted the appointment last year, particularly towards the end of the year after Rick Tocchet got in here, but throughout the year where he was far more assertive, everybody observed, than he had been in years past. And, of course, he's got a contract that carries him through with the Vancouver Canucks here for several years.
And maybe, guys, this calms down some Canucks fans, too, because, of course, with two other brothers in the league, there's always going to be that, does he want to go play and reunite all three? If he's got a C on his chest here, does that cement him into Vancouver Canucks history a little bit more?
Well, let's face it, because the Canucks never trade their captains, right?
No, never.
Yeah.
But come on, it is less likely. Horvat did have a long tenure, so if you add the Horvat tenure to Hughes' name, that guarantees him here for a while.
By the way, nothing will calm down the angst of a Vancouver Canucks fan, so it doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true, too.
Winning, John. Winning will calm it down. We haven't had enough of that.
You know what? Winning will calm it down to an extent. And then it will be like Toronto Blue Jay fans. They're not winning the right way.
100%. And then the fourth line winger breakdown gets hot and heavy. Yes.
Hey, when Blake and I first started doing this show, Shannon, they were so bloody good that fourth line wingers were
we did whole shows on it.
The only point of angst with this hockey club. Six defensemen and fourth line wingers, right, Blake?
Well, just to put a punctuation mark on our discussion earlier about Lloydminster and being with Gibbons, I sat with 500 Oiler fans last night, and they talked about who was going to be the fourth line center. And I said, if you're worried about the fourth line center, you don't have very many problems.
Yeah,
That's a good
exactly.
team.
Yeah, that's first place problems.
Yeah,
we're looking at trying to make the playoffs problems. And John, a guy who can go a big way, and there was an article recently or locally here, Vancouver is awesome, on Philip Hronek and his offseason training regimen. The guy looks absolutely shredded here as he comes into his first Vancouver Canucks training camp. We didn't see a whole lot of him last year. It was a handful of games. He was clearly nursing an injury, but part of the reason of why he's here, of course, is because the Detroit Red Wings thought he might be a tough guy to re-sign coming off a very good year last year. And we both think that that's really great for the Canucks, that you've got a motivated player here.
Well, and the two things on that, Matt. Steve Yzerman had a choice with Hronek long term, or he's got to have to worry about Mo Seider at a certain point. So they went with Seider and decided that he was going to be the guy that's going to be the cornerstone of their blue line. Hronek also, I guarantee you, heard a lot of the criticism when the trade occurred. And he knows that he's going to a tough market, that he's going to have to prove himself, and he's going to be given an opportunity by a coaching staff and a management team that really do believe in him. And on the positive side for me, for the Canucks, is you're not worried about drafting a guy and getting him up to an NHL level. You already got a guy at an NHL level, and he understands how to play this game. And I think if you look at where the Canucks are, with Hronek there, with Ian Cole there, this is the one part of the Canucks roster, I think, that is much improved. And I think that between now and, I hate to mention this word, the trade deadline, I think that the defense score for the Canucks is still going to get even better.
The countdown to Tyler Myers and September 15th bonus is on here. But are you still of the mind? Are you still seeing signs and still seeing enough teams that this could be a more active September than we are traditionally used to? Because, hey, we are guilty of pumping up the trade deadline only to be disappointed. We are guilty of pumping up free agency activity sometimes to be disappointed. We never pump up September, but could it be actually that there's some action not only for Vancouver but elsewhere?
Game of poker right now, Blake. I think because there are still too many people over the cap that are playing in LTIR that are going to want to get themselves some relief for the regular season, so they have to do something urgently. I think it's between 6 and 8 teams right now that are over. So I do, expect to see some movement once camps start. It's not normal that we see that in the NHL, but that's going to be a fact of life. And
that's fun. I'm all for it. Let's have some tweaks.
And the other thing on the Myers situation, there's only one team going to be playing the bonus. Only one team.
Yeah, of course.
And then he becomes somebody that does a Mike Greer look at Tyler Myers and say he can help the Sharks blue line or other teams that think that what Myers can do can make a difference in a 5-6 role.
Just to put this to bed, in today's modern National Hockey League, is it possible that you have a back drawer deal already done, whether it's with San Jose or anybody? Like, can you keep that quiet enough? Can you keep everybody on task enough that actually happens in today's NHL, you think?
I think it's possible. I think you have to have specific managers in mind. I know of 2 or 3 that would say, if one word of this leaks out, the deal's off.
Right.
Lou's famous for that. If pointing a finger across the desk and saying, if you want to mention this and this gets out, I'm not making the deal.
Yeah.
I think, and the other thing about this is that what's happening now, and I think managers starting to buy into this because you're seeing it in the press releases too, is the teams are engineering so much of their own media and there's so much of their own news. They want to hold the news for themselves anyway.
Right.
And then, because we're seeing them announce term and contract dollars in their media releases, which 5 years ago we wouldn't have seen. So I think that's part now of the culture of a hockey team. Keep it secret. Release it in your own on your own Twitter or X account, in your Instagram account, on your Facebook page. Do your own stuff, and then we'll talk about it with the rest of the media.
One more Canucks question for you before we move on here, John. But Tanner Pearson he looks healthy again, or at least all the indications and reports are that he looks healthy again. He's here skating. He's even playing golf locally. How much do you think he can help after what was a wipeout season last year and multiple surgeries on that hand?
I don't know, and you'd have to think that even if he's at 100%, it's going to take him from a conditioning perspective after missing so much hockey. But he's still got the pedigree to be a National Hockey League player. He just adds another depth piece to a team that really has improved its depth over the summertime. So I wouldn't be surprised to Pearson to be a difference maker every once in a while for the Canucks if they stick with him.
Will we be hearing from Hockey Canada and the 2018 World Junior long-awaited report here? Is that I see some of that is out there. What's your information on that?
Well, I think there's an expectation that it has to happen before camps open. But the one group of people that are involved in this that don't have that deadline, if you want to call it that, is the city police in London, Ontario. So much because I do believe that everybody's trying to work in concert. London City Police, the National Hockey League, Hockey Canada is now on the outside looking in so many ways on this. But I do think that when the NHL have their release of what they think has gone on, it will be because the London City Police have also released their information. So NHL probably wants it done. But London City Police, I don't think, as I understand it, are ready yet.
What's your understanding of, are we anticipating that those players are going to be ineligible to play NHL games this year? What's your understanding of the consequences and what
the scope? What's the scope of the punishment?
Well, when have we seen anything like this before?
Voinov would be comparable to some degree,
but this is a group of players.
This is different, but I think there's a comparable there.
But Slava Voinov, correct me if I'm wrong, if I did it while he was an NHL player.
Right.
These kids were 18 years old, 19 years old. They weren't National Hockey League players. They weren't members of the NHL Players Association.
Right.
They are going to pay the price. Whether it's 8 of them or 5 of them or 4 of them, once the hearing and the results get made public, they're going to pay a price that the NHL really, I don't think, has had to deal with something that Logan Mailloux in London, Ontario, with what he did as a junior hockey player, is closer to this type of thing than what happened with an active NHL player. So I don't know what the scope is. And Gary and Bill are keeping it very close to the vest what the scope will be. But rest assured, in 2023, the National Hockey League has heard all the noise and will, I think, probably be as harsh as they feel they can be for those that deserve to be punished.
People won't want to hear this, John, but what the league probably is going over too is what can they legally do in this situation, because a player that doesn't like whatever punishment is meted out could say, you don't have the jurisdiction to punish me over this sort of thing. I'm sure there's some issues there too.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, Blake. And you wonder what the role of the Players Association will be in this one. Because every time there's a suspension in the NHL, the Players Association goes to the defense of the player that's being punished. What can the PA do? This new executive director of the Players Association. I think that this is. I don't think we've ever seen this, at least in my time. And if somebody wants to correct me, I'm happy to learn from it.
And people often come in support of the PA during things like work stoppages and that sort of thing. It's a tricky high wire for the PA to walk along, because they're going to come off as defending guys that are being accused of some pretty heinous things. That's not a great PR look for the PA to come to their defense. But
and what happens if the London City Police don't charge anybody?
Right. Oh, it's complicated.
The league still has the jurisdiction to suspend it based on the information that they have.
Yeah.
And nobody's putting their head in the sand to say nothing happened. Nobody's going to do that. So it's one of it's
tricky. Yeah.
It really is and it's not a slippery slope. It's just different than anything I've ever contemplated what's going to happen and how many players are going to be involved and the level of it. I think one of the key things everybody has to understand in this one, the level of involvement of the alleged 8. What was the level of involvement of the alleged 8? And I think we have to measure that too.
Yeah, and as for the PA not looking great optically, if they come to the defense, I mean, part of its foundational requirement is to represent members. I mean,
sure.
they're almost like,
but they weren't
almost like a defense attorney.
They weren't union members at the time.
That's it.
So how does that fit in? And
right,
I don't envy Mr. Walsh in this one.
Yeah.
No, nor do I. Speaking of matters off ice, and you've talked to this on this subject with us in the past. Joel Quenneville, Stan Bowman addressed the GM's coaches meetings outside of Chicago. They were invited by Gary Bettman. They declined to speak to reporters. Bettman said they were there voluntarily to share their experiences. It almost sounds like this is part of their penance and cautionary tales for the managers and coaches that they addressed. As for reinstatement, the commissioner said he has not yet gotten, let me get the exact words. I still have to make a judgment as to when or whether it's appropriate for them to be reinstated. So that's not a question I'm prepared to answer now. Do you have any sense on when he might be prepared to answer that question on Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman?
No. I mean, this is another one that we have never seen before. And I think that it's such a touchy subject. And I think Gary, the one thing I've learned about being around Gary and working with the man is he does understand timing. And do you want to reinstate two people who should be reinstated at a time where many people, particularly in and around the Chicago Blackhawk organization, are finally getting over what happened? And they're trying to turn a new page with Connor Bedard in Chicago. And not that people should forget what happened, because we should never forget what happened. But the moment of when to release his decision is probably as difficult in the Quinnville Bowman situation as it is with the alleged 8. And so that, to me, it's fascinating. I might even suspect that we might be waiting a little longer for Joel and Stan than we will the 8 players.
Yeah.
Just because I think that, there's a real feeling that Chicago's on its way back. They have done a good job in the market of trying to apologize. The passing of Rocky Wirtz, this is not the time to, just from an optics point of view, this is not the time to allow Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman to come back.
Plus, if you're the league, you're sort of forced to clean up that brand and that franchise because you're going to have a face of the league playing for that emblem.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly the point. And here's the other thing, and this is the pragmatic Shannon saying this. The moment Joel Quenneville becomes available, how many coaching positions are available?
Yeah,
I'm not saying the same for Stan, and that's not reflecting that Stan's a bad GM. Stan's done a good job as a general manager and an assistant GM. But the moment Joel Quenneville is on the market, how many coaches are on the hot seat?
Yeah, absolutely. John, 1 week from today, Canucks play Calgary.
Wow.
The Young Stars in Penticton. So we're getting close. Thank you for your time, sir. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
You guys are in Penticton. I'll probably be on a golf course somewhere in Banff. So
really? Not that far away. Okay.
We'll talk to you from Banff. We'll talk to you from Banff next week.
Let's do it.
Thanks, John.
Cheers, boys.
This Sekeres and Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good.